Could have been a UFO then. Could have
Potentially, who knows? Who
I need, I
knows?
need you, I need you to clarify what it was, LP.
I'll, I'll get on the NASA website afterwards
Oh,
and I'll
oh,
check it out.
oh, 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 get off that. That's the website. We're on air. We're on air. The green light's on. Hello, WANS fans. Welcome to another episode of We Are Not Scientists. I'm here with, as usual, in Mission Control and deepest, darkest Devon with Commander LP. Hello, Commander.
Hi Simon, how are you doing, and how are all the WANS fans out there?
Yeah, I'm good. I've noticed you and Christelle have been communicating quite a lot this week. Christelle and her servers at the underground secret bunker. What's going on?
Yeah, so no, we've been having a little bit of a debate, Simon. Now, as you know, here on WANS, we are sort of we always base all of our discussions on scientific reason and fact. And again, when you use science, you shouldn't really have to have divisive kind of arguments and conversations like you would in other elements of life, because science can learn, it can examine new facts, new hypotheses can be created.
No, it doesn't.
However, so, however, there is one topic that does seem to split people's opinions, even in the scientific community and it out into the wider community, and that is the definition of a planet. And should Pluto be made a planet again after it was declassified and turned into a dwarf planet back in 2006? So this is something that Christelle and I feel quite passionately about, but we see it from a very different perspective. So,
Hot topic. Hot
yes,
topic. Do I get the deciding call?
absolutely. This is over to you. You know, this is great responsibility is being given to you here, Simon. So, you know, you're going
Wow.
to listen to two scientific debates, and then you can decide whether Pluto should be reinstated as a planet or should remain as a dwarf planet based on the propositions that you'll hear over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'd say.
Excellent. So, if you've got any credit left after all your chatting this week, let's give Christella a call.
Shall we?
Just well, I'm not allowed to touch those buttons there, so if you could do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. So,
Oh,
right.
yep. All right. Yep. Yeah. Could swing in. Oh yeah, I think we through. Hello. Hello.
Hello. Hi, guys.
Awesome. Awesome. The line works. I
The
thought
line
I thought
is
you guys had
working
worn it out
today.
this week.
I've had to do a few repairs to keep it going for this one, but we're here. We've made it.
We're going to talk about something that's very close to you and your servers' hearts, Christelle.
Y-
If servers do have hearts, I don't know. You tell me.
Some servers definitely have hearts, I'd say.
And what are they saying? What are you saying?
Well, I've always been Team Pluto as a planet, so we have this kind of debate going on between Commander LP and I, and I'm standing by my decision forever and ever. Let's see if I can convince you.
Pluto itself is a really interesting world. It orbits 5.8 billion kilometers from the sun. It is a long, long, long way out, and it is very cold out there. Its average surface temperature maybe about minus 230 degrees Celsius. And if you consider absolute zero is only minus 273 Celsius, you can see it's pretty chilly. Okay. It's got a diameter of about 2,300 kilometers. So if you think Earth's about 12,500 kilometers, it's a pretty small world. And
It's kind of a Sorry, it's about the half the sort of size of the United States if you wanted like a visual of it, isn't it? It's sort of like if you think
yes,
of the landmass, the United States, about half that width.
yes, yeah, yeah, and it's so far out to complete one orbit around the sun. It takes 248 years, or Earth years, for a single year on Pluto. And Pluto also has 5 moons, and we'll probably talk about some of these moons, especially one of them, a little bit later in the discussion. But its main 5 moons are Charon, Hydra, Nix, Kerberos, and Styx.
I mean,
Um,
the fact he's got a moon called Sharon is a big tick for me straight away.
it's Sharon with a CH. They're trying to make it, a bit more scientific. So now Now, also, it has some major geological features, which are quite fascinating as well. We mentioned about servers having hearts. I think most people, when they saw the first images of Pluto that were sent back by the New Horizons probe that passed back in 2015, had like a heart shape on one side of Pluto. It's known as Sputnik Planitia, essentially a huge plain of nitrogen ice. So like a big glacier of nitrogen, but frozen so solid. Because again,
LP, you're doing yourself a disservice here, because basically you're telling me it's got a moon called Sharon.
yes,
It's got a heart on the side of it.
yes.
I mean, Christelle, you've not said anything yet, and you're already winning.
I know. It speaks for itself. The planet speaks for itself.
So but that was just a little bit about the planet. But right now on to the debate as to why the International Astronomical Union, known as the IAU, these are the guys that really decide how things should be in space, why they decided to basically degrade Pluto's planet status and grade it as a dwarf planet. Okay, so the IAU has 3 definitions of what a planet should be. Okay, definition 1, it has to be in orbit around the sun. So Pluto passes that. Pluto is in orbit around the sun. There is a little caveat that I'm going to come to a little bit later on Pluto's orbit and quite how it orbits, but it orbits around the sun, so it is therefore not a moon.
Let me just give that a ding. There we go. Just gonna that's a yes. So 3.
That's a yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So we agree, because again there are larger objects out in the solar system, like that actually, like I think Ganymede, Jupiter's moon, I think it's probably bigger than Pluto, but that is a moon because it's orbiting Jupiter, not the sun. So Pluto does orbit the sun. Although, again, there's a caveat I'm going to throw in there later. It also has to have sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium state. In other words, it has to be round, pretty much. A scientist saying it's got to be round.
Okay.
Planets aren't exactly spherical because they tend to bulge in the middle a little bit because they spin, but essentially it has to be a round shape, not some kind of strange elongated thing.
Are we giving that a ding, or are you going to tell me it's oblong?
Yeah. No. But I would say that Pluto passes that test.
Okay,
it is round.
Ding.
So it's a ding.
Let me just. I've got my new ding button here. There we go.
Sorry.
There we go.
Take your
So LP, which side are you on? Because already, again, this is 2 out of 3 now, and it's a planet. So is this gonna be a big punch in the stomach for this third one?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. Now, this is where it all breaks down, because it all sounds good so far, doesn't it? And this is why people that think it should be a planet, this is why they're so focused on, well, look at all these things. It's so planet-like. But the problem that it has is a planet should have cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Okay. Now, when we say that, what we're saying is, if you look at Neptune or Uranus or Jupiter, there is like nothing that really crosses their paths as they go around. They're so big and so important in their orbit. Anything that's kind of got caught in their gravity has become a moon of theirs, and they do their home thing. Whereas Pluto heads right out into the Kuiper belt and like circles around comets and all sorts of things, and then right back in again. Actually, it crosses pretty much the orbit of Neptune. So sometimes its location is closer to the sun than Neptune, and sometimes it's further away. So it has some very strange characteristics. And what was interesting, when I first heard that the IAU were going to declassify Pluto, I A, wasn't surprised, and B, had no issue, because even before this discussion had been had, Pluto was a bit weird, because again, it had a very eccentric orbit. When we talk about eccentric, we mean it's not like a circular orbit around the sun. It kind of gets closer and then gets much further away. And it also orbits not on the ecliptic. Now, when we talk about the ecliptic, most of the planets that orbit the sun orbit on a plane of between the sort of like 0 and 3 degrees. They're pretty much flat. Most of them. Mercury's a little bit out. It's about 6 degrees up. So from one side, orbit to the other side, it might be 6 degrees above the sun. Whereas Pluto is about 17 degrees. It's pretty much drunk and flying off at the top of the solar system and coming back in again. So it was always strange. And scientists were always like, it does things that the other planets don't do.
Right, let's
But then,
just read out three again, number three again, and let's just interrogate that.
so what we're saying is it has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit of other sort of objects, which Pluto hasn't done because it passes very close to other large objects like Neptune, and then it goes out to the Kuiper belt. Now,
Don't all planets pass near a close object though? Isn't that true, Christelle?
Now, this is a very interesting third point, but let me just slow LP down a minute and also give the definition, the Copernican planetary definition. Now, this is something that's been used since the 16th century. This definition is planets are any geologically active bodies in space. Okay, so keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that planetary science is broadly based on geological and the geophysical concept of planets, right? For it to have gravitationally cleared its orbit, which is the third point, we can definitely say that, yes, there are things trailing around and orbiting alongside Pluto. But did you know that in 2010 and in 2021, scientists discovered asteroids co-moving with Earth, which means Earth has not actually cleared all of its neighbors gravitationally. So does that then put Earth in a funny little pickle?
That is very interesting. That is very interesting, Christelle.
Yeah, right. So the whole thing about the IAU's reclassification of this planet really had absolutely nothing to do with Pluto initially. The whole reason the reclassification came in was because they discovered another object floating out in the Kuiper belt, originally called, I think, UB313. UB313, which has now been called Eris. When they discovered UB313, it was very similar to Pluto, and they were not sure how to name it. They said, well, is this also a planet? Does that mean now we have 10 planets? Could there be 15 planets? Could there be 20 planets? 100 planets? How, we don't want to have too many planets. And what they did was they held discussions, but they didn't really do it the way that they should have. So they had these meetings and they said, we're going to classify how to name planets, how to decide if it's a planet or not a planet, and another thing, because there's a very specific way that planets and other objects in the sky are named, right? So they find UB313 floating about. They're like, oh, is it another planet? Oh, it couldn't possibly be another planet. And they start having secret meetings. They do not follow their own bylaws, as in they were supposed to put these proposals out into the world for their peers to check, to be discussed at least 4 months before the big old meeting that they had where Pluto was reclassified, right? They didn't do that. They dropped this definition at the General Assembly, and in that decided to reclassify Pluto. So this was not done above board. It was all done very rushed. There's a lot of language within this discussion that doesn't make a lot of sense. And there's just one other point before I let LP pop back in. Did you know that a dwarf planet is not a subcategory of a planet? It's not a subcategory. The language is messed up. So essentially, a dwarf planet is not a planet at all of any description by the IAU's language. And let's also just quickly note that the IAU, the Astronomical Union, is not made up of planetary scientists. It's made up of astronomers. That's what it's made of. So I think there needs to be much more planetary scientists involved in deciding these things. I don't know that huge amount about the International Astronomical Union, but I do know that this whole process seemed pretty dodgy to me, and I think very rough.
It is just something pretty fishy going on there. Someone with beef with Pluto, someone with beef with the number 9, maybe.
Yeah,
they want 8. Someone a bit superstitious, and I think maybe the kind of general, I'd say slightly confused wording of number 3 is evidence of that meddling, if you like. What do you think, LP?
I think Christelle raises some very good points, and it is right to say that astronomers will want to categorize objects due to a certain system, and say a planetary science, who's more interested in things like geology, doesn't really care about its kind of classification in that sense, because they look at an object for its interest. But to me, Titan, it's a moon. Yeah, it is not a planet. It is the moon of Saturn. It has an atmosphere. It has, you could ride a boat on its lakes of liquid methane. A fascinating world. Still not a planet. Sorry, it may be fascinating. It may be complex. It may have lots of interesting things going on that get geologists really excited. And I love a bit of sort of planetary geology. But in of itself, we need to be able to have definitions when we're looking at our own solar system and other solar systems of how we classify different types of objects. Now, Christelle sort of brought in Eris there, which is about the same size and mass of Pluto. So again, they found that one back in 2005. Also around the same time, they found another dwarf planet known as Haumea, and then another one known as Makemake, and there's other objects.
Do they have hearts? Do they have hearts on the side?
Well, I don't think we've seen
do
them.
They have hearts?
One thing I would,
you are as cold as the surface of Pluto, LP. This is a very, very objective scientific view here.
Yes,
we're hearing from you.
Yes.
It's even named after a Disney character.
So, but on the other side, right? Okay, and I want to give props here to another dwarf planet known as Ceres. Now, Ceres was actually discovered in 1801 and is a dwarf planet that orbits. It's not a trans-Neptunian object like Pluto, like Eris, Haumea, and Makemake. These are objects that are out past Neptune. This is an object that orbits in the asteroid belt. Okay, now this was always just sort of classified as a big asteroid, even though it's a big round thing. Now, because Ceres is so massive and it is has sufficient mass for its self-gravity to overcome rigid body forces, so that it assumes a hydrostatic equilibrium state, i.e. round, that actually got a promotion and became a dwarf planet. So I was like, hey, for Ceres. So these things, it works in both directions, I would say. Now,
as Christelle just said, though, this is interesting, that a dwarf planet is a bit of a misnomer, really, because we all think, oh, well, it's not a planet, it's a dwarf planet, so it's still a planet. But definition-wise, it's not a planet, a dwarf planet, hey, Christelle. It's a trick.
That's right. And honestly, Ron Eckers, he said that it was an absolute mess of a language. And what I have read, it really confuses the actual progress of planetary science, because you're now like dividing and subdividing all of these planets, these heavenly bodies, as it were. And you'll find that in a lot of scientific journals, scientists will refer to moons as planets. They will refer to Pluto as a planet, because it clarifies the language, right? So, and not all of them, but there's a large proponent of planetary scientists who do talk about them all in this way. Now, I do have another question. So this, like, if we go back to Voyager 2, right? Voyager 2 was just an incredible mission. And I think it utilized an alignment that was like once in every 157 years or something, a planetary alignment to get itself where it needed to go. And it could have, utilizing that alignment, gone to Pluto back in, what was it, 96 LP?
I think it went past Neptune in 89.
In 89. So
that's when it passed Neptune.
On. Yeah, so it could have carried on and gone to Pluto, but they decided that they would look at Triton. That was what they diverted to. They were really wanted to look at Triton. So they didn't go out to Pluto. But
I just love that, the idea of like Voyager 2 kind of space, and then like the scientists in the control tower, basically like with these little game system controls. Turn around. No, we're not going. We're going to divert to Titan.
It was one of the reasons actually Voyager 1 didn't make it out to Uranus and Neptune, because they made a decision when they got to Saturn, they wanted to check out Titan. So they diverted Voyager 1 to look at Titan, but Titan couldn't see anything because Titan has a thick methane atmosphere, so it couldn't see through the atmosphere, and then it flung off into space. But they knew they still had Voyager 2 that could still fulfill the mission to fly by Uranus and Neptune.
As it was going to Pluto, did the IAU have a word? Just drive it away from there. Good.
I do think there's a little bit of Pluto hate, because when we did actually go to Pluto, right? Like, we could not believe the geology we were seeing. That there's convection on this planet. There's icy convection. Okay, this is crazy to me. There are these sections that are like geometrical shapes, and you can kind of see the outline of them. They're really interesting. And what they think is happening is that in the core of the planet, you've got these ice layers that are warming up through whatever geological action is going inside, and they're rising up, whereas that really, really cold frozen ice on the surface is sinking down in like a geode shape and creating these really interesting, so it's like a lava lamp. That's what they're saying, like an ice lava lamp of hot and super frozen, not hot, but warmer and super frozen ice shifting places, which I think is fascinating. So my question sort of is, if Voyager 2 had gone out to Pluto all those years ago, if it had made that journey and it had seen the volume of geological activity that's going on, the different planes, that planet is fascinating. If they had seen all that then, do you really think they would have demoted it?
I think eventually they would have, and because I'm going to come to my final argument as to another issue that I have with Pluto, it being classified as a planet, and that's its relationship with its largest moon, Charon, which we talked about. Now normally when we look
this is gold dust. I mean, what is going on with Pluto and Charon?
Well, it's actually this is quite a lovely story, I think, that their relationship with one another. Now, when you look at moons, and Charon is not big compared to some of the moons in the solar system, like you've got Ganymede, which is even bigger than Mercury. And I should say, like, Ganymede is bigger than Mercury, but Mercury is a planet because it orbits the sun. But Ganymede is a moon, and like I say,
right, mate, you made that point before.
We just need to separate this idea of geologic and size and blah blah blah, and what an object's actually doing. But what's interesting,
if you could see LP now, I'm looking at him. He's beaded sweater coming down his face.
He's animated.
A lot of arm flaring.
He's got excited. No, but I think one of the biggest problems is when you look at Charon and Pluto compared to other moons. Although we have a large moon, and our moon's much bigger than Pluto and Charon, they are still, the moons themselves are still relatively small compared to their parent planet. Okay, so like I think Ganymede is only, it's like a 50th the size of Jupiter. Even if that, I don't know the statistics, but it's tiny. Our moon is only like 1/6 the size of our planet. Okay, whereas Charon is almost half the size of Pluto. So what it does is, instead of Charon actually orbiting Pluto, there are a lot of scientists, they kind of orbit each other. Their faces are tidally locked, so they can't take their gaze off each other. So if you were to stand on Pluto, Charon would always be in the sky. It would never move because they basically orbit each other. But because they're orbiting each other, although Pluto is more massive, so doesn't move as much, they orbit actually a point in space, not sort of within the planet. I don't know if that makes sense, Simon, but essentially,
what happened to them in their relationships for them to be forced to gaze at each other for the rest of their lives?
There could have been a collision that they're I don't know if they're 100% sure whether Charon and Pluto are made of exactly the same rock and that split them apart. You can see on Charon it's got a huge sort of rift that runs around it, like the planet's been bust out, or the moon's been bust open and put back together again. So essentially, there are a lot of scientists that think that maybe we need to look at reclassifying this again, and instead of Pluto being a planet, really Pluto and Charon are a binary dwarf planet system. Because I think we've got to give Charon some props here because of the way that this object interacts with Pluto. So there's a lot more complexity that needs to be considered when we're discussing what a planet should be. But to me, if you have a planet and another with a moon that's orbiting it, and that moon is so massive that it can put that central point of those orbits around each other actually in space and not within the planet itself, like you have here on Earth, where the moon tugs on Earth, but ultimately the central point that the orbit goes around is still within Earth, then surely, again, this has to be another reason to think, I'm sorry, guys, as interesting as Pluto may be, geologically, it just isn't. It's just not big enough and interesting enough in it from a way it orbits point of view to be a planet in its own right.
It's the interesting planet that doesn't quite do it like everybody else. It brings things along with it as well on the journey. The character, you know, Pluto's relationship with Sharon, and the eternity staring at each other, which is a fascinating story.
What's quite sad though is, you know, we've talked about Pluto's heart. Pluto's heart actually looks away from Sharon, so it doesn't actually, they're tightly locked but in the wrong direction, as it were, which is kind of sad from a romantic point of view. But yes. One thing I did want to say though is where however you feel about Pluto, for me personally, I in no way does it detract from the fascinating world that it is and its relationship with its fascinating moon, or maybe binary dwarf sister, brother, whatever you want to call it, and that region of space. I mean, you know, discovering new things and having these debates about what these objects are, and the fact that we have the technology to be able to visit these worlds, to even have these discussions, I find absolutely amazing. So, but that's my piece. So I don't know if I'll pass back to Christelle if you've got any final thoughts.
Well, first, I just want to touch on the fact that you just talked about its incredible orbit and then said it's not scientifically interesting enough in its orbit, which is, you know, that's fine, LP. It's just, you know, a completely fascinating, beyond belief world out there in the deepest depths that has permeated my life and my fascination. I do believe that these definitions of what a planet is and what, you know, because I have definitions for satellites, hence moons, things like that. They have definitions for asteroids and comets and what makes them. But this dwarf planet floating around with no real connection to an actual planet, you know, actual planets, quote unquote, seems like it's a disservice. It seems like it's a real disservice to planetary science and to Pluto. I find it offensive. And in closing, Pluto is a planet. So that's what we're going to go with. I've decided for the rest of it.
And it has been a planet. It has been classified as a planet. Yeah. Let's not get it wrong. We're not trying to like convince, or not convince, but trying to discuss that it could be a planet. It's been a planet.
It was there and it was taken away. And actually, interestingly, when Lawrence mentioned Ceres, that was the exact same General Assembly, the IAU General Assembly, that upgraded Ceres from an asteroid to a dwarf
Hooray
planet.
for Ceres! Hooray.
Downgraded poor old Pluto from a planet to a dwarf planet.
Do we know how long it was a planet? Classified as a planet by humans.
I think it was something like 76 years. So it was discovered in 1930.
Yeah, you'd be right. Yeah, and it was declassified in 2006. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So short run.
So Simon, you've heard what Christelle and I have had to say. You've obviously heard the passion of the arguments. What do you take from it? What have you? Do you side with the IAU, or do you believe that this debate is far from over and Pluto maybe should be reclassified as a planet in its own right?
The things that really stick out to me are the fact that Pluto was officially defined as a planet by human beings for 76 years, so it's been a planet. I think you know which way I'm going here. As a mere child, you know, Pluto was a favorite of mine because, as you can probably realize, I always thought it was named after a Disney character. There you go. Look, it's got a heart on the side of it. It's got a moon called Sharon. It does its own thing in its own way. You know, it sounds like it's a fun place to be. It's like like a world of a lava lamp on there. Might be a bit cold, but wrap up warm. I can just feel a real affinity with it. And not that that affinity should force my decision, because I know it should be a very objective decision. But it's a bit of both subjective, unobjective. I'm going to say that Pluto should still be a planet. It is a planet. It should be the ninth planet, and there should be 9 planets in our solar system. But hey, life's too short, guys. Let's just all celebrate that Pluto's there.
I think absolutely. Well, and I think the most important thing from today's debate, Simon, is hopefully you've learned a lot, and hopefully the WANS fans have kind of, it's maybe tweaked their interest. I would say, as I always do, check out the NASA website. Type in Pluto. You can actually see live in time where Pluto is on its orbit around the sun and the orbits of all of its companions, like its moon Charon. Loads of fascinating information about it. And again, anything that I've said doesn't in any way detract from what a fascinating world it is. And I'm so glad that we got to see it close up in 2015 via the New Horizons flyby. So no, good debate, I thought.
Christelle, I'm totally feeling and getting what you're saying. And I guess your servers are big fans as well, right?
Well, we do love an underdog. That's what we do over here. We're loving on the underdog. It's always been my favorite planet as well, Simon. I think, there's just something mysterious about this little lonely boy hanging out there. And it is so lovely to know that he's got his little friends, and he's got the love of his life staring deep into her eyes, or given the side eye for all eternity. You don't know. Maybe they had a fight.
If you have another week like last week with the price of these calls, I don't think you're going to be eating for a couple of weeks, LP. So let's get on that teleportation device and get it working.
Well, I've been working on some upgrades, and me and Bob have been really busy in here, just refining and fine tuning. So I think we can make it work.
LP, what are you thinking? Mission control? Do you think it can take teleportation?
We might have to rearrange some of the equipment. I'm sure we could arrange things just to fit in the teleportation device our end. I mean, Christelle, if you could send us the plans, because I suppose I'll have to construct the other end of the teleportation device at this end. I've got a few bits of old Raspberry Pi knocking about that I could wire up. I'm sure, that could help. And we could welcome you to the mission control here in deepest, darkest ever.
I'll send you over the Haynes manual.
Christelle, take care. Thanks very much for listening, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.
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 Hi, WANS fans. If you enjoyed joining us from wherever in the universe you listen from, then please take a second to rate us or leave a comment. And if you want more WANS transmissions in your life, why not check out our past episodes on Spotify or Apple Podcasts? You can contact us on Instagram or use the antiquated email delivery system at wearenot2001@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you.